Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So as an athlete, we are taught to shut off our emotions to be successful. As entrepreneurs, we do the same exact thing. And I started to see that pattern with a lot of my entrepreneurial clients. And I was like, wow, like I'm kind of doing the same thing. It's just with a different population that I wasn't even thinking about. And I started to see the same thing with my female entrepreneurs too.
Right.
So a lot of the people I was attracting weren't connected to their body. They weren't connected to their emotions. They didn't really know what they were feeling. So being able to kind of walk them through a process to be able to connect with that so they can grow their business was just really fascinating to kind of step into.
This is Secrets for Success.
Welcome to the Secrets for Success podcast. I'm your host, Greg Todd. Thank you as always for joining me. I have a very, very special guest today. I just told this person off camera that she has indirectly changed my life, changed the way that I'm doing things. And it's through the blessing that you have been to so many of the people that are very close to me. You're also a part of my community over the last year, so we can talk about that too. That should be interesting. But anyways, no, seriously, I want to say, Christina, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for what you have done for me. You have done for so many people inside of the SSHC community. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate it.
So why don't you tell the people a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how did you get into this mental health space?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
So how I got started was I played sports growing up, and I really struggled with the mental side of sports. And originally when I went into the mental health side of things, that's who I wanted to work with. And then COVID hit, so I had to pivot my business a little bit.
Okay.
And I just started working with like the general population. And as I started to kind of come into my own, I started to attract the people that I, was kind of growing into at that point.
Right.
And it ended up being entrepreneurs.
Right.
I would have never thought that I'd be working with, most of my caseload is about like 50% are males.
Males, yeah.
So male entrepreneurs is who I started to attract into, my world. And I started to see athletes and entrepreneurs have very similar mindsets.
Okay. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So as an athlete, we are taught to shut off our emotions to be successful. As entrepreneurs, we do the same exact thing. And I started to see that pattern with a lot of my entrepreneurial clients. And I was like, wow, like I'm kind of doing the same thing. It's just with a different population that I wasn't even thinking about. And I started to see the same thing with my female entrepreneurs too.
Right.
So a lot of the people I was attracting weren't connected to their body. They weren't connected to their emotions. They didn't really know what they were feeling. So being able to kind of walk them through a process to be able to connect with that so they can grow their business was just really fascinating to kind of step into.
Okay, let's talk about this a bit. This not being able to connect with your emotions. Mm-hmm. There's positives to it, I'm assuming, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's negatives. So can we talk about some of the positives first?
Yeah.
It'll make me feel better. Let's talk about the positive. Let's talk about how it's sabotaging us as well. So,
no, the positives are you shut off your emotions, you can, pretty much get through anything.
Right.
Any kind of trauma even, not even just, trying to be successful, but, things that we go through in our lives, our system, is trying to protect us all the time.
Right.
So that's when we shut off to be able to kind of get through something that might be traumatic or hard or difficult. So that's where it kind of helps us and protects us.
So it's a way of us, I guess I would say, when we say we're so resilient, a lot of us being resilient is that we're just shutting off our emotions, right? And powering through things. My wife has told me many times, like, you don't feel things, and that's why you're able to, or you do feel it, you just suppress it, so much. So it's helped me in many ways, because it's like one of those things where, like they say, you get knocked down, you get back up, and I'm able to kind of like sometimes shut off the emotional side of it to keep on going, whether it's the rejections, the no's, the this, that, or people leaving or this, I'm able to do that. But then you're also saying there's a lot of negative to it.
But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
does it catch up to you eventually?
Yes, it does. Every
right?
time.
So
Every time.
it doesn't even matter if you're shutting off in the moment, you're protecting yourself, but it ends up coming out eventually in some capacity.
Right.
Our bodies are sending us messages all the time.
Right.
We're just choosing to listen to them or not.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about how this can catch up to you and what are some of the things that you're seeing with clients.
Yeah. So I think we get to a threshold a lot of times if we're not, addressing our emotions. I was reading this quote recently, and it was, sustainable expansion outward requires consistent nourishment inward. So you can only expand so far outwardly without nourishing inward. And that's what I've seen with the entrepreneurs. That's that's what happens. Is
so you hit at some point we're going to hit our threshold if we're not taking care of this.
Right.
Ed Milet, and I know he's not the first person I say. I think it was T. Harv Eker is where I heard this initially.
Yeah.
But it's this whole idea of the thermostat, right? Where like right now we have thermostat set at 73 in the room, right? And if heat starts to come, blah blah blah, it's gonna chip on, and it's gonna go down to us to 73. And for us, we hit that threshold, whether of success, this, that, da 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 da. And once we go beyond it, we can say the thermostat, it's our internal. Yep. Once we go beyond it, we just cool down, and that could be us sabotaging ourselves because we've only built ourselves up to a certain amount inwardly. Is that sound about accurate?
That sounds, it's actually kind of funny. I was talking to one of your people the other day, and they had this idea in their head that they were going to make the $500,000 mark.
Right.
And they're there.
Right.
But they can't break it.
Yeah.
And it's, I was actually using that same analogy with them where, you like set that in your mind that you were going to make it there. And that was your homeostasis or your set point, right? Yeah. So if you don't change your belief system internally, you can't raise the temperature. You can't break that threshold. Right. So it's, putting yourself in your mind there before it even happens, because your mind was at that $500,000 mark.
Right.
So you have to kind of, shift and be able to grow to get that thermostat to go up to kind of raise your homeostasis, so to speak.
All right. What are things you need to do?
You need to be surrounding yourself with people that are at that level. Okay. You also need to be taking time to envision what that version of yourself looks like. Right. What does it feel like? Right. What is that person doing? What are they experiencing? Why are they doing that? Right. And a lot of times we're not doing that as entrepreneurs. We're creating systems for our businesses, but we're not creating systems for our mental side of things.
Right. Okay. This is so good. So can I tell you, because let's talk about the good and the bad with me. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Like how I've been able to do the things that you have just said and gotten myself to kind of where I'm at. And maybe I'm stuck right now. I don't know. But thinking that I came from $3.25 an hour to where I'm at now, I look at it, and one of the big things is I remember the first time I made over $100,000 a year. I was just, in my mind, I'm like I've made it, because I've never seen anyone in my family, like I've seen my dad break 100K, but like I'm talking getting to 150, 200, like it's like, okay, that's it. Like there's nowhere else to go. And when I joined my first business networking group and saw that there were other people that were at higher levels, and then I also saw what they did with the resources that they got, it felt really good to me. And I'm like, not only do I see it's possible, but then I also saw, wait, when I get to this level, this is what I can do with it. And it kind of helped to reframe what my thoughts were around money. And I truly do believe that. That's why I've continued to kind of like go up the ranks. There was a time I went to Norway. It was in 2002. And I went to Norway, and this probably was one of the biggest life changes for me. My wife's cousin is married to a Norwegian, and nobody from Jamaica had ever come and like visited her. Nobody had the money to to go. But I saved up. We saved up money for a year to make this trip for 14 days, And we didn't realize they were freaking loaded. Dude was an entrepreneur. And they were loaded. But what I saw was how much he blessed his friends, his family with the resources that he had. And that trip, it changed everything, for me. Not just being around someone that's doing a lot better than me, but also seeing that, wait a minute, if I do make it to this point, this is what I can do for my family, for my friends, for this, that, da. And so it sounds like that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think Ed Milet talks about that too. Like, put yourself in like the environment.
Right.
So that you can experience it firsthand, so that you can actually create it in your head of what it is that you want.
Yeah. It's so huge, because I think so many people, you get to that 500K mark and it's like, all right, let's just say we're going to move that to 800 or $1 million. They don't even know what they would do with that. Like, what would I even do with these new resources anyway? So if you haven't kind of mapped that out, you're going to sabotage yourself along the way, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. All right. So that's one thing. You said another one before we started. You said, a lot of times people, they struggle with, they get up to a certain level and then they feel stuck. And then you said there was another group of people as well.
Yeah, they're growing too fast.
Yes.
And they're facing things that are maybe like past experiences, right? Like if you're growing your business, you have to manage a team.
Right.
Well, if you were never taught how to communicate effectively and build healthy relationships or manage, things are going to come up that you maybe experienced in your past, whether it's people pleasing, perfectionism, the imposter syndrome. A lot of those things start to happen if you're growing very quickly and then you're worried about losing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That was me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is interesting. At Renewal Rehab, I grew my team to, like, I think at our peak, 32 employees. But it was a slow ascent. It wasn't like whoo, all at once, right? And so even last year, when I went from 5 people in-house or 4 people in-house to like nearly 20, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I can do this, of course, because I had 30-something people at Renewal Rehab. It was great, blah, blah, blah. But that happened over like 10 years, right? Whereas this happened over like a month and a half, right? Like right before the event. And then I noticed that all of my saboteurs, if you want to call it, my people pleasing, avoiding, and then for me, it's like, I'll just like, okay, yeah, I'll do, okay, yeah, you deal with it, you deal with it, you deal with it. And then until I have to deal with that, I just, okay, everybody go, type of deal. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. I'm kind of like you in that sense where I tend to be that avoider. I don't oversee a team, but that's kind of what happens for me is I'll avoid for an extended period of time and then I'll feel really fatigued or like I'll feel really depressed for a little while. And I'm like, that's because I'm avoiding whatever is kind of happening right now. So that kind of forces me to address that.
What do you recommend for people that are avoiders like us to, because we avoid, and then we start to feel so crummy inside.
Yep.
And then like, what do you recommend for us to do to like not prolong this avoiding thing?
Go to therapy.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this before we got on camera, but like the resistance to just like sort through some of that stuff.
Right.
It's not as heavy as you think it is. It feels really heavy and it feels really hard, but it's because you haven't dealt with it before.
Right.
And, I think people have this idea of what therapy is, and it doesn't have to be that idea in your head.
Right.
If you find the right person. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs will seek out therapy and, they walk in and they'll talk about things and maybe just talk about like their feelings and kind of vent. But as entrepreneurs, we want an action plan.
Right.
We want things to be able to do to sort through what it is that we're going through.
Right.
We don't want to just talk about it. We want to do something about it.
Right.
And I think like that's the, difference between some of like the traditional therapists that are like, oh, if you talk through things or if you do some of this or that, like that'll be good. Whereas I think I'm a little bit more solutions focused in that area where I don't think therapy is a lifelong thing.
Right.
I think you use it for what you need it for. You learn the tools, and then you're able to do it on your own as you kind of grow and progress.
Yeah. I love that. So I share with you that I'm working with someone now. And one of the things that you just said, I'm like, gosh, that's what I find after the majority of our sessions is that what I thought, the thing that I was avoiding, that I thought was so big, you start to realize it's really not that big.
Yeah.
How do y'all do that? Like, what exactly are you doing to make us, or is it just process it? I don't know. I want to hear from you.
So when you're thinking through things, you're in your own head, like you're in your own mind, you're dealing with it on your own.
Right.
That's why journaling is so important, I think, is because it gets things outside of yourself.
Right.
So it seems not as big. For some reason, we, catastrophize things in our head. And when we're able to say it out loud and kind of talk through it, it makes it less heavy. It makes it less, daunting, I guess. Right. So we're all trying to deal with this stuff on our own, and it seems really big in our head, but then we're able to get in front of somebody and actually be forced to process it.
Right.
And it doesn't feel as big.
Okay. I love that. So it's really just the act of processing, and you can process via journaling, but you can also process by like having someone where you're talking it out with. And once you get it out of you, it kind of almost shrinks it.
Yeah. And I think as like in my position, I'm here to ask you the right questions.
Right.
That's really what I'm there for.
Right.
I'm asking you the questions that you're too afraid to ask yourself, or you don't even know to ask yourself.
Okay.
So that's what makes it not so heavy too, is you only have a limited amount of, vocabulary around your emotions and experiences, and somebody else being able to kind of help you sort through that is part of what I do.
I love that. I love that. All right. Can we go back to the athlete versus entrepreneur? You've worked with athletes. You were an athlete, are an athlete. You've worked with entrepreneurs. You are an entrepreneur. Can you talk about the similarities between the two? And then are there any differences of working with the athletes versus working with entrepreneurs?
Good question. I think entrepreneurship is a sport, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, I know that you treat it that way too. Even with like doing, your 90-day challenge and things, like you incorporate so much of like the physical wellness into the entrepreneurship stuff. So I don't think there is that much of a difference between it. It's just how you use your body, I guess, would probably be more.
Right.
You're using your body as an entrepreneur, but you're using your mental capacity a little bit differently than as an athlete.
Christina, I always said I would never be an entrepreneur, right? But I loved competition and athletics so much. And even off camera, I just told you, like, you brought us in a fruit thing, whatnot, and we had the fruit, and I was like, listen, I'm going to Georgia next week. I am going to pig out so much. I'm going to have chicken and waffles. I'm going to have this. Because in my mind, I'm in my off season right now. Now, my off season is not 3 months. Yeah. My off season is just going to be 10 days, right? I'm going to have it's actually been a little longer than that. It's been about 2.5 weeks, and I'm going to have a 4-week off season. Yeah. And then after that, I'm right back into my in-season performance, right? Yep. And so, I said I would never be an entrepreneur, but I realized that I'm so addicted to sport and to competition and to, the highs and the lows. Like, I just love it so much. I guess because I love to live in chaos. I love it. And I feel like there's so many similarities. I used to run marathons. In 2008 was when I ran my first one. That was the Disney Marathon. And the marathon was the closest thing that I could get to recreating the sport of, what I felt in high school and whatnot. Yeah. And I feel like today, that's what entrepreneurship is for me. Totally. Like the event is my marathon. The 6 months up to it is my training for the event. Yep. Right. And I love that so much rides on it and this and that and da-da-da-da-da. Right. Yeah. And then you have that kind of like lull after it. Like you come down from it. I love coming down from the big game. You know what I mean? And I mean, I feel like I say I hate it, but I actually love it. And then it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do it again? And I'm like, I just feel like it's so much similarities. Yeah. To being an athlete and entrepreneurship. Okay, but you've worked with both. The difference you would say is what?
I don't know if I can find a difference. It's funny, when I graduated college, there's like this joke that, you know, your identity kind of shifts as, you know, an athlete to being a normal everyday person, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess like that, maybe part of it, like that identity shift is maybe a little bit of a difference. Like you're playing to, you know, win a trophy or something, or, you know, get the championship. And then, you know, you don't really have that you're working towards. But I guess in entrepreneurship, you do too. I mean, you're always kind of sorting through that.
I wonder if, because I'm thinking of professional athletes that I worked with as a physical therapist, and they struggled so much after their professional career was over. And it's like, okay, where do I find myself in this new marketplace, right? You know, it's like my value for so many years has been this. Everybody's known me as this. I feel like with entrepreneurship, I'm like, well, maybe we don't struggle, but what we actually do.
Oh, yeah, because, you do. That's what brings most people to me.
Yeah. Because I was just thinking, like a lot of the clients that I work with and you work with, let's say they were a physical therapist, right? And they were a treating physical therapist. And then now they want to grow their business. And now the identity of them being a treating physical therapist versus now being a business owner that happens to run a physical therapy company, it totally freaks them out. And they're like, oh my gosh, I no longer have that identity as well. So we struggle with that.
Oh, for sure.
Crazy, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if there's, I mean, I can't think of any differences.
Yeah. I don't think there is.
Yeah. Well,
And I think there's a reason why so many athletes become entrepreneurs.
Right, yeah.
You know, I think I talk to most entrepreneurs, they played a sport at some point in their life, or they were part of a team. And I think that's, you know, pretty common for us.
As someone that has done both, and you played, you were in athletics at a pretty high level.
I played college, basketball and lacrosse.
Okay, basketball and lacrosse. And you've now been an entrepreneur. Which one do you think is harder? Or is it just different?
Well, okay, so for me, being an entrepreneur is so much harder because I never played a solo sport. I was always part of a team.
Gotcha. Okay.
So for me, you know, joining our community was kind of like me joining a team because I was feeling so isolated and alone as an entrepreneur.
Right.
And I didn't really have the tools to be able to help myself navigate it.
Okay.
Whereas when I was an athlete, I kind of had all the resources available to me. Now I have to seek them out.
Right.
They were just given to me back then.
Wow. I didn't think about that. Okay, That's awesome. All right. So there are entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast. It is called The Secrets for Success. You know, as you all have heard on the podcast, this year has been such a huge year for me. And I attribute a lot of that being able to transform to Christina directly and indirectly. But I really believe that it's just because I've processed through things that I've never done before. Yeah. So there are things that I have learned and that have helped me with not sabotaging myself in ways that I didn't even realize that I was doing. Besides therapy, you know, which you highly recommend, and I'm telling you all, I highly recommend it for you all as well. What are some things that you could tell anyone that's listening right now? Like, at least start here to help you with breaking through the barriers or the ceiling that you're at right now. Just practical, everyday things that you think they could do. Yeah.
So I usually start people with like 4 different things. That's kind of like the system. I usually do like emotional intelligence journaling. Okay. And that can just be like reflection, like just sitting down and creating space to reflect. Okay. I think Robin Sharma actually calls it like the MVP method. It's like meditation, visualization, and prayer. And I love that. Like we should all be, you know, creating space for that. And prayer doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be, you know, strong in your faith to be able to do that. I think it's even just like connecting with something bigger than yourself or a purpose. So I think like doing something like that in your day is so important, like having a solid morning routine or an evening routine. Our body and minds love routines, and I think we operate better that way. Understanding what it is that you value. When we don't know what we value, we're moving throughout our lives basically living someone else's values. So we need to get really clear on what it is that our values are. So, you know, being able to sit down and be like, okay, what is it that I value, and how can I be more in alignment with those values so I can move better in my business or in my life? I think separating, you said this earlier, but separating our identity from our accomplishments. Who are you separate from what it is that you do? And I don't think a lot of people know what that is, or they have a really hard time knowing what that is. And if you're not separating your identity from your accomplishments, you're going to have a really hard time answering the question, what do you need? Because you're not in tune with what it is that you want and need. It's always being in tune with what everyone else wants and needs. So I think, like creating the space to be able to sit down and do some of those things or do that work, I think could be really valuable for people. Moving your body. I mean, we know that to be true. But I think those are probably like a good place to start, is just creating the space to reflect and be able to kind of think for yourself, and then creating the space to kind of explore and develop yourself as well.
So let's talk about the reflect part, because I think a lot of people struggle with this. Okay, all right, let's just say I'm waking up early, you know, I've got 20, 30 minutes or whatnot. Okay, I kind of understand the meditation. All right, I've done some of the visualization stuff. All right, you know, I pray to, you know, whatever you believe or your maker or whatnot. But now it's time for me to reflect. Most people are like, reflect on what? Like where do I even, like what's the conversations I should be having during that reflection time? So, I would love for you to talk about that.
I love this because I think a lot of people struggle with this. I am a huge advocate for being able to connect with your body and be able to reflect on like even just like your past day, right? If you're waking up in the morning thinking about, I know that you do it kind of at night, but in the mornings being able to reflect, okay, like what happened yesterday? What experiences did I have yesterday that maybe I've been avoiding addressing, or that there was something that came up that I just kind of like powered through, right? And then starting to think of, okay, what was I feeling in my body? What was the sensation I was feeling? What's the feeling like that I was feeling while I was experiencing that thing? And then what's the emotion tied to that? And being able to identify all those things gives you some information. It gives you feedback. Once you're able to kind of identify that, it makes you aware. Oh, when my body is feeling this way, I tend to get angry, or I tend to feel sad, or I feel hurt. And then being able to reflect on, okay, when I was in that experience, what was I thinking? What were the thoughts kind of going through my head? You know, was I worried about something? Was I thinking about something completely different than what was happening? Being able to kind of reflect on that. And then thinking, you know, what was happening around me externally? Like, can I kind of encapture what it was that I was experiencing externally? And then the last question is, what do I need right now? And like I said earlier, I think that's the hardest question for people to answer. But I think that's the most important question to answer. And that could be, I need to go for a walk right now, or I need to, you know, go give my kids a hug. I need to go call my dad, call my mom, like whatever it is that you might need. I think it's really important to start asking yourself that question.
Okay. This is so, what you just said is so clutch. And I want to share what I used to do before I learned what you just said. So in my GT planner, it says, like, there's 3 boxes on the left-hand side: reignite, reflect, and then rebuild, right? So the reignite is just whatever you do for working out, okay? The reflect, I'd have a box there, which I'll talk about in a second. And then the rebuild is just the few takeaways from whatever personal development. By the way, I am reading The Wealth That Money Can't Buy right now. So it's not even chapters. It's just like,
I love it.
It's so cool. It's so good. Oh my God. Is Robert Sharma one of those guys that you just want to meet?
Yes.
Like, he's just like, oh my gosh, he's so awesome. Okay. So in the reflect, for the last 4 years that I've had the planner, I would reflect on what is the thing. So I usually do this in the morning. I actually do it in the morning. What is the thing that I'm still thinking about from yesterday that's annoying me?
Okay.
Okay. And I would put it there. All right. And then I would just like, yeah, okay, like this is what it is. And then that's it.
Yeah.
And that's what I used to do. That's what I say. I think a lot of like, I made the damn planner. I thought, oh yeah, that's what you do. Just at least address it so that it doesn't linger on. But I didn't do what you just said. It wasn't until the last 6 months that I've actually done that. Well, when I was dealing with that yesterday, it could be a client, it could be a vendor, it could be a team member, whatever. What was I feeling? Most people don't know what they're feeling. For me, I was explaining this to my wife yesterday. I get like a pressure and a heaviness in my chest area, or I get it on my shoulders. And so Carrie was like, oh, great. You know when I'm always asking you to rub your neck? I'm like, yeah. Yes. I'm like, you're a physical therapist. She's like, yeah, because for me, when I get that, whatever things are bothering me emotionally, it all lies right here in my neck. And so I never used to feel or could even describe, this is what I'm feeling. What's the body sensation that's coming from this? So now when, like sometimes I didn't even realize something was bothering me. Now I understand how I'm feeling. It's like, why am I feeling that? Oh, that's actually really bothering me.
Yeah.
And that's so huge, guys, if you could understand in the reflect period, it's not just a matter of something, oh, this is something that I dealt with yesterday. It's the sensation, the feelings that come along with it. That has been such a game changer. So thank you for explaining that to people. Y'all start doing it.
Well, it helps you build trust with yourself too, and then also figure out a way to regulate yourself.
Right.
We are not taught how to regulate our nervous system.
Right, yeah.
That is the way to do it right there.
Wow.
So if we can identify what it is that's happening for us, then we can start to think, okay, how do I release this?
Right.
How do I let this go? How do I work through this? And that helps you build self-trust that you can do it in the face of, you feeling a little bit off or you feeling hurt by something. Like, you can still regulate yourself. We're so used to like adapting to what everyone else is at, right? Like the person that you're having that argument with, like you're so used to like getting to their level and not taking the time to regulate yourself while that's happening. So that's what happens when we experience hard things too, is we end up adapting to the energy of that experience and not regulating ourselves.
Okay. This is great. I could talk to you honestly for like 4 hours, and I'm just, since you're local, can you just come on the podcast?
Yeah.
Maybe we can do like once a quarter. We'll just do like, is that cool? Is that good? All right. So there's one other question before we kind of wrap things up that I want to ask, because you just talked about the power of reflection and how to be in tune with your feelings and understand kind of thoughts, feelings, sensation. And I think that's so powerful. There's also the kind of the other side of it, in that as entrepreneurs, we're so, I guess our egos are just so strong that like when people don't do the things we want them to do, people say no, people reject us, like I've been taught, like, you got to detach. You got to detach your feeling from the outcome. And so there's like this part, like I've got to detach my feeling from the outcome. Like for instance, I do the event, right? And I know that we did well, but I have done certain events and like we didn't do well, right? And it would crush me before, and it wasn't until I learned, like, you got to detach yourself from the outcome that like I've been able to do that. And I just feel as though that's what I struggle with. I can detach myself from the outcome, so I'm not showing emotion there, and that helps me to push on and move forward regardless of what happens. If an employee is happy with me or not happy with me, a team member, so I can detach there and say what I need to say. But then sometimes it's like I have to, like in the morning, I need to like get back in my feelings again. So how do you balance, or what do you recommend for myself and for other people? It's like, okay, you guys want me to detach myself from the outcome so I can move forward and not be in my feelings all day and be in my head and then not do anything because one person said no to me. But then over here, I've got to like be in my feelings. So, I mean, that's something I struggle with. It's like, I I feel like I got to turn on the hat and then take off the hat sometimes.
Yeah. I think that's a good question because I don't even know if it's turning off your feelings. I think it's detaching your identity from the outcome.
Okay.
So you're separating yourself from the outcome. And I think that takes a lot of like self-worth.
Yeah.
So knowing that you are worthy regardless of the outcome.
Okay.
Knowing that you are valuable and that you provided value regardless of where other people are at, right?
Right.
Being able to show up as your authentic self in entrepreneurship, I think is a really, hard thing for people to do.
That's so
And we think we have to shut off our feelings to do that. And I don't think we have to. I think we can actually learn a lot from like being intuitive and understanding how you feel, around your event, for instance.
Right.
So I don't know if it's detaching your feelings. I think it's more detaching your identity and knowing that your worth is separate from the outcome.
Gotcha. You're good. You're good at what you do.
Well, I don't know.
You are. Accept it.
Acceptance.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Okay, so why don't you tell people where they can find you?
So I am on Instagram. You can find me there, Christina.lmhc. If you go on there, you can find all my stuff there. Okay. And if you want to reach out to me independently, you're more than welcome to do that too. I'll give you my cell phone number. No.
She's like, hell no.
But yeah, my website and everything is on there. So you can, click on that and reach out to me there too.
Okay, awesome. Well, guys, I can tell you right now, just to kind of wrap up a few things. This is a game changer. And I don't think you have to be at any particular level to start working on this. I think that sometimes I hear some of the well-to-do entrepreneurs like oh man, get a therapist, da 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 da, and I know that there's a lot of newbies out there that listen to this podcast, and I want you newbies to know that if I had to do it over again, I would have gotten myself a therapist from early in the process.
Yeah.
I think it would have made, I'm not saying it would have made our process any easier, but it just, I would have been able to extract so much more wisdom out of everything that I went through. And I think I would have just been able to navigate it a bit more. I don't know how much unnecessary like issues I put on my body because of not doing the things we just talked about.
Yeah.
Over the last, 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurs are doing it backwards. I think we're hiring the business coach. We're trying to get our systems in place, but our mind isn't right to be able to even receive or do the things that we're being told to do. Yeah. And I know that you see that so much, right? And I think we're doing it in reverse. I think you're, trying to grow your business without focusing on your, mindset and some of your mental blocks. Yeah. And I think it needs to be happening in reverse or alongside that, right? Yeah. Where you're working through some of the imposter syndrome, perfectionism, people pleasing, some of maybe your, accomplishment being tied to your identity. I think we're doing it backwards. Yeah. And if we start from the get-go with the mental health side of things, I think
100% agree with you. Yeah. We're doing it backwards.
Yeah. And I know you see it because you got people coming in and they're dealing with mental blocks and you're trying to help them grow their business. Right. They're not ready to receive it.
And they're not ready to receive it. Yeah. And that, and I think that's one of the things that I've had to see. I'm trying to end the podcast. We can't end it. We can't end this. So good. But I think that's one of the big things that I have learned, that I can say the same message year after year. I really don't have to. We continue to grow, and I don't really change. You've been around me long enough to know that what Greg says is what Greg says. He's not going to come up with some new gimmick thing. It's pretty much the same message. And I know that they can hear it, and they might hear it, but they still haven't received it yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They still haven't received it. Yeah. And until that happens, it doesn't matter what I say. You're not receiving it anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really, I think we're doing it totally backwards.
Yeah.
I think we need to really focus more on that. And that's why I'm like, you need to blow up. You need to blow up because it's and we'll talk about this in episode 2 of Christina.
Part 2.
And in the next episode, we're going to talk about how how this becomes commonplace. Because I truly believe that the majority of people, this is what the majority of people are thinking. Okay, just so you know about your audience, because I am your audience.
Yeah.
Right? The majority are thinking that they don't need this right now, and they can't afford to do this right now. And because business coaching is so much more kind of trendy or in, that I need to do that first. And then when I hit the high levels of success, then I can have the luxury.
Yeah.
This is the truth, Christina. I can have the luxury of having a personal therapist now or whatnot.
Yeah.
And the only way I can have and a personal therapist has to be one-on-one. So, and if you're going to get a really good one that like that's going to cost a lot of money. Whereas business coaching can be in group. That's why we got to change the whole narrative with that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
That'll be in the next episode.
I just want to say that even if you get the business success that you want, if you haven't worked on the mental side of things, you're not going to be able to actually truly enjoy it. You're always going to feel like it's not enough.
It's not enough.
And you're not enough.
Yeah.
So that's just something to think about too.
Yeah.
Is
that's probably been one of the biggest things, even for me. You know, it's this constant like, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And you create products, you create solutions for people under that identity that like, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. So I got to give more until you end up losing yourself in the process.
Yep.
Whereas I can say this year, and this is crazy because I've been a high functioning drunk. I'm like a high functioning drunk.
Yeah.
You know, and look at, and it's not like, and I want people to understand, like I live a really good life, good life, and have a lot of great things around me. But there was just certain things that I was creating out of that perspective.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it did a lot of good.
Yeah. But
also I can truly say this. This is the first year that I created something where it's like, I'm plenty enough. If you notice, even in my offer this year, you notice I had nobody in it.
Yep.
I'm like, mother effer, I'm plenty. If y'all want all of this, it's the first time I've ever done that.
Yep.
Like in so long.
Yeah.
And I realized that even before, it was really coming from when I really went deep down, like what was going on. I can't believe I'm doing this on a podcast. But I was like, oh, I've got to have. Remember the person we were just talking about, like before camera, right?
Yep.
The whole book thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, I got to have that because what I have is not enough.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah.
That realization completely changed. I mean, I even told you on stage when you presented an offer, you looked so relaxed.
I was so relaxed.
And you just did not care.
I did not care.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't care.
This is it. Take it or leave it.
You take it or leave it.
Yeah.
That's it. And gosh, I can't tell you how freeing it is.
Yeah.
I can't tell, like you know, it's so freeing. It's like, wow. So guys, I just, you know, as you guys are listening to this, I hope you've been able to receive what this brilliant person has shared with us. And I hope you receive maybe even something that I said, you know, because this is such a game changer. It is such a game changer for people. So
I appreciate you talking about it because I don't think enough people are.
Yeah.
So.
The one thing that I will credit myself with is that I've always been just open and vulnerable. I don't want people to put me on any pedestal. It's just too, like, I've been around the block long enough to know that, that's just not a good idea. So as long as people can know I'm broken, like we're good. Like, I didn't expect much from him anyway. You know, no. But seriously, like, yeah, it needs to. And if I don't do it, then especially with the platform that I have, then I'm not making it like safe for my other people to do it.
For sure.
And so we need to have this as commonplace. So,
for sure.
Anyways, thank you so much for being on. We'll try to end it now.
Okay, we'll end it out. All
right, but we are going to have you back on. Okay, I want to have you back on. And there's so many other things we can talk about. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate you too, Greg.
That was easy.